Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending this session. My name is Tim Scannell. I'm with the CIO Executive Council. I have the pleasure today of introducing the speaker who will be telling you all about the IoT and mobile sensing application he's putting into play at his company. His name is Doug Saunders. He is the VP and CIO of Advanced Disposal Services, one of the largest waste management companies in the United States, now even larger following a major acquisition. He's an expert in leading business-critical, complex, high-profile global initiatives, programs, and multi-function projects. He also has a solid track record in applying structure and process to a range of practical technology situations. He's here today to talk about how his company and his technology teams have applied IoT, sensing, and mobile technologies to the business of disposing waste. And it may sound like it's a pretty simple thing, but it's not. And by the way, it is working to create a cleaner environment for current and future generations. So without much ado, I bring you Doug Saunders.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. So good afternoon, everyone. See a few of you are interested in talking a little bit about trash today. I've been in the waste industry for about 20 years. It's a interesting industry. It's kind of grown from, it kind of started very local, mom and pop, and I'm specifically probably talking about the U.S. here. It has grown very quickly and rapidly over the last 20 or so years. But the one thing that has always kind of resonated in this particular sector is technology has always been behind. It's been a very manual, very old school process-oriented business, and that's rapidly changing. And so the old saying, not sure who said it, but change in life is inevitable, change in business is vital. That's not me, but somebody said that, somebody very smart. You have to be ever-changing, ever adaptive to what's going on around you. And so over really the last 15 years, as we've seen the iPhones, all the smartphones, smart devices, all the new technologies coming out, the complexities of our industries have grown. The focus on the environment, whether you really believe in global warming and global change, environmental change, or you don't, or you're in the middle, you hear about it every day no matter where you are, and we're at the forefront. So how we take care of the environment with especially the waste products is critical to sustaining the environmental approach to the earth. And really technology has come a long way to kind of help us do that. So I'm going to spend a few minutes today really kind of talking about, give you a little introduction on myself, a little high-level global and U.S. industry specific information so we can kind of set the stage of how we developed a strategy to address some of our concerns around how we take care of the environment, how we keep our employees and our communities safe, and how we really engage our customers and the technology that we use to do it. So we'll go through a couple use cases around that as well. So a little bit about myself. I'm with Advanced Disposal. You kind of see our corporate headquarters up here. I'm based in the United States, obviously in Florida. For those of you who know the geography, North Florida. Live right near the beach, enjoy the beach every day. Got two great kids. Our lives are very heavily involved in sports. And I went to the University of Alabama, and I don't really have a traditional IT technical background. I have a master's degree in Russian history, right? So you can see how that really transposed into kind of where I am today. It kind of helps in the boardroom at the executive level with all the politics that goes on, but certainly not your traditional background. You see a picture of Bryant-Denny Stadium there, obviously a big Alabama fan. For those of you who watch varsity intercollegiate tackle football in the U.S., you would know we're actually pretty good at that. Not unlike, I'm very intrigued by European football. It's the crowd, the atmosphere around that is something I'd love to experience. But really something that that we enjoy as a family is all the sports. And so, like I mentioned, I've been in the industry 20 years. So Republic Services was a very small startup when I began with them back in the 90s. That grew to a $12 billion organization, US dollar. And I spent a couple of years with Bertelsmann, which is a big German media company. Really enjoyed that, the global aspect of business and getting out of kind of the trash industry, so to speak. And then obviously made my way to advanced disposal. But I think that the best job I had was more of a part-time job, and I was a video replay official for the National Hockey League. So I sat in the booth and ate hot dogs, watched hockey, and just made calls for about 10 years. And it was just a lot of fun, and pay you some money to do that. So that's a little bit about me, so you know who is kind of talking to you today, and just some really global industry highlights. 2 billion metric tons of MSW, or municipal solid waste. This is what is generated at your house or in most businesses. We're not talking about what's being recycled or what's being composted or special waste or large industrial waste. We're just talking about what most of the humans generate. And that's going to increase to 3.4 billion metric tons by 2050. So we obviously have to do something with all of this waste. We either have to figure out how to put it in the ground, how to incinerate it, how to recycle it, how to not generate it, but it's becoming a bigger problem. And we talk about the worldwide waste problem, but the European and North America, while maybe not having the most population, generates 30-ish% of the waste while having not all the population. So that's what I mean about what are we consuming and generating in this space that maybe we can curtail, so it never even gets to me, so I have to pick it up. I think the other thing is recycling. So everybody wants to recycle. We've heard about recycling for years, but in the business, it's not profitable. Nobody wants the product. It's contaminated. It's China, which was the biggest consumer from the U.S. of recycled product, is basically rejecting it now. And so that becomes a big problem. It used to be that a truck would pull up to a recycle center, and they would give me $10, $12 a ton. Now I'm paying them $90 to $100 to take it. So it's a money loss, and it's a big problem. We even have municipalities in the U.S. that are just basically saying we want out of the game because it costs too much. So what do we really gain? So a big problem with that as well. I think the other thing that needs to occur, and is occurring, is investment in the infrastructure to manage this problem globally, especially in developing countries, helping them start on the right foot, getting them the foundation to help take care of these things. There's some great technology now that can be introduced if the investments are right to really help them address the global waste problem. So a little bit around the financials of the industry. So it's a $330 billion US dollar industry globally. So there's a lot of money to be made by companies in this space. It's expected to almost double, by 2025. So it is growing rapidly. So in the U.S., there's really 4 big players. It's almost become a monopoly, so to speak, with these 4 players. We're one of them, but most people have heard of Waste Management. Republic, Waste Connections, and us are the 4 big players. You still have a lot of municipalities doing it, but what you've seen is the smaller mom and pops has been consolidated and bought up by these 4 big companies. And you're still seeing this occur today. So the number 1 company just bought the number 4 company, so now you're really down to 3. So it's really an ever-changing landscape. One thing to really note about this industry is I kind of mentioned the mom and pops, but it's very localized. It's run local. So typically, if you're calling for a pickup or something or services in a particular locale, you're talking to people there. So it's a decentralized model in a lot of cases. And what we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years, it really changed and become more centralized. So I put this quote up from Laura Tuck, who works for the World Bank, and it just kind of reiterates what we're talking about on a global scale around some of the waste problems. And you notice the picture here, a landfill, I believe this is in India, that typically people are just dumping wherever they can. That needs to change, to really make an impact on the environment. And so, a couple things is I really kind of want to walk through what we've done at ADS. So you take a global problem, and I can narrow that down to where we are actually in business, which is in about half the states in North America. And what's our strategy to really try to address some of these challenges, not just environmental, but safety, customer experience, what do we do with all the data we collect, etc. So what I'd like to do is kind of run you through the 5 strategies that we came up with at Advanced Disposal. And these aren't technical strategies. These are strategies that developed cross-team. We had the executive team buy off on these. We presented them to the board. They are run out of IT, so we actually program manage these efforts. But really what you have here is 5 products or 5 strategies that we have developed to kind of really address some of the challenges we're facing in our industry. From a sales perspective, I mentioned the mom and pop. I mentioned very manual process. Pricing was done on Excel spreadsheets. So we've kind of created an order to cash, we did create an order to cash process that systematically or digitizes that whole process. So now a customer can talk to a sales rep and complete a transaction, on an iPad. We can leverage that for e-com as well. And I think the key there is the ability to take products and services, which we've never really done before, and because its pricing is unique throughout the footprint. Obviously, the different tax bases, the different services, how far it is to the landfill. There's a lot of things that go into that, a lot of data. And so being able to systematically put that into our applications and allow our end users and customers to price and contract services directly, systematically through us without having a whole lot of manual process was a big win for us. The customer used to be, hey, I call up, I need some trash service, come give me a container, we pick it up, you bill, etc. I mean, I don't know how many, I don't know that I've ever called a trash company in my life, but you'd be surprised at how many people do and want to interact with us. And you have to think about the type of customer. If I'm building homes and I have a roll-off, which is that big long container, and I want to pick up, it used to be I had to call, I had to wait, hey, come pick this container up, empty it, and bring it back so I can keep using it. Well, now you can use a mobile phone, you hit a button, that pickup comes automatically, that pull and return occurs without having the inconvenience of actually making a phone call to us. So something that's really focused on customer experience. Master data, and what we've called master data. As I've mentioned, the data, because of the decentralized model, had a lot of different processes to do the same thing. So we had data that was almost impossible to do analytics on. We had silos with the data, so every business unit had their own. They didn't believe what finance had, or they didn't believe what ops had or sales had, and so we really didn't have the ability to do analytics. Customer care, we had a unique set of employees, whether it's dispatch, sales, customer care, retention reps, that literally had 15 different screens they were in, very inefficient. And really, how do you get that down and build what we would call single pane of glass so we could deal with the customer in a more efficient manner and have higher employee satisfaction. The in-cab piece, this really gets into some of the onboard computing, right? So what are we doing on the truck? What data are we collecting off the truck? What are we grabbing out of the landfill? and primarily it was geared towards safety. Safety is a big challenge within our industry. There's 6,000 trucks in our fleet. Others are bigger, roaming all over the U.S. and at the landfill as well. Lots of moving pieces of equipment, so safety is paramount. So this is a kind of a high-level look at the strategy and what we executed on, and now I'll kind of walk through some of the challenges and what we did with those, kind of narrowing that in a little bit more on the IoT space, especially on some of the connected fleet, the connected on the container, and at the landfill and recycle centers. So the challenges, I kind of mentioned some of these. Nobody wants to run into a garbage truck or have that garbage truck run into you. So being able to educate and have our drivers act in a safe manner is paramount. We want to get our employees home every night. We want to be able to protect the community. We have people working on the back of trucks. We have people working on the working face of the landfill, and there's bulldozers and other equipment moving around. You got to be really, really careful. Efficiency. So the truck. So yeah, you run routes. Everybody does routing. That's not a big trick. But for us, it's a little different. So if I'm a commercial route, like I'm picking up a fast food restaurant, well, do I have to get out of the truck and open up a door and then drive the truck there and flip the container to empty it? Do I have to unlock it? Is it in a parking lot? That takes a lot. So understanding and getting data off the truck on how we can better improve the efficiencies is paramount. And then we wanted to create new revenue models. So how do we leverage all this data we're collecting and do something with it that we could either be disruptive in the market or that we could leverage additional revenue from it. So kind of here's what we did, and here's kind of a picture of a truck, and this is a vendor agnostic presentation, but obviously we work very closely with third-party vendors on a variety of technologies to really to accomplish this. So from cameras, so anywhere from 5 to 10 cameras on the truck. Why is this important? So just the other day, we had a truck going down an interstate highway. A car hit the truck, came over into our lane. Well, now we have the video that shows what happened. And so taking that risk off of us by having this kind of technology is huge. I know what hard brakes, fast accelerations, going over the speed limit, all of these things that help us educate the driver on acting more safe. So we have normal safety programs that we run all of our drivers and employees through, but this is an added element that helps with safety. There's sensors around, backup cameras. There's people near. There's all sorts of sensors. There's these compactors on some of these trucks. Is there somebody that is in there? Sometimes we pick up commercial dumpsters and somebody's sleeping in there. So you want to know that there's something going on in the truck to help prevent a tragedy. So a lot of sensors and cameras that were primarily focused on safety. And our safety and risk numbers are down tremendous in terms of what we're having to pay out of accidents, the number of accidents when we deploy this technology. It was an immediate effect. Now, the funny thing was the drivers didn't like it because for example, there's an inboard camera. Hey, you're on the phone. Why are you on your cell phone? So there's a little bit of education around, how do the drivers, the employees interact with this technology? But it's been a very successful program to help keep our employees safe and the community safe. From the efficiency standpoint, doing route audits and the things I talked about, knowing that how long do these stops take? What can I do to reduce the trip time? Because the more pulls or dumps that I have into that truck, the more profitable I am. But we obviously need to do that safely, so it's not just driving fast. So we were able to use this kind of technology to do route audits all the time. And why does that stop take 2 minutes and then the next 3 take 25 seconds? What it allows us to do is take some of that data and arrange routes in a more efficient way or upcharge the customer. Who can you price increase because it takes us 3 minutes when it should take us 25 seconds? What are you doing in your environment that kind of allows that to occur? And that really falls into some of this new revenue that we've seen. So we've seen about 15 to 25% more revenue in some of these commercial routes where we've deployed this because we're able to do things like this. The other data we collected from the bus of the truck around diagnostics, what's going on in the truck, tire pressure, engine, right? All of that to where I can now look and say, okay, we have a problem with this truck. The last thing we want is a truck not running routes. We lose revenue. Therefore, we can keep the trucks on the road much quicker. So our mean time to repair a truck has gone down because now where we have this technology, we know where the problem is. We don't have to hook up diagnostic equipment. We generally, sometimes I'm sure we do. But for the most part, we're able to really be very proactive about taking care of some of these maintenance before it breaks even. So getting data around how long does these parts last? How often should we change these brake pads or spark plugs or whatever it might be? And then we kind of talked about one new revenue model, but think of the video and how it's used. I'm showing video of the container getting picked up. What if it's overfilled, right? Traditionally, we just dumped it and went. But all that tells us is, one, we should upcharge for that because you're overfilling the container. But two, maybe you need a bigger container. Maybe you need more service. So we've been able to work with customers and say, your container's always full. There's trash all over the ground. Let's give you a bigger container. Let's open the service, or let's up the service to a more frequent manner. So a lot of the data and video we've now leveraged that was geared towards safety has now been a great revenue generator. So containers. So variety of containers and millions and millions and millions of them. I think we have 15 to 16 million different containers. Some are residential, some are commercial, some are industrial. But the biggest problem in the waste industry is inventory. Where are they and how many do I own? And again, very decentralized. Every little division is ordering containers, very capital intensive. Now we have the ability to track a container where it is all the time. And that's key because in an e-commerce model, if I'm selling a 20-yard roll-off, which is kind of that top left box there, for a housing development, I got to know I sell it online. Right, I got to know meaning if I sell it online, I got to know I have the box to actually deliver it. So this kind of solves that problem as well. How full is the container? Right now we pick you up twice a week, but I just mentioned I get there and it's always overfilled. Knowing that ahead of time could be handy. What's in it? We've talked about some of the contamination of recycle. Leveraging some technology to really help with that problem. And that's, like I mentioned, a big problem because it's a big loss leader for us. Service verification, being able to tell the customer, as a residential customer, I know I put my can out, you picked it up, or we picked it up, great. But for some commercial customers or hospitals or people in shopping malls, they really want to know when that truck, where is it, when are you going to get it, because I get fined if it gets over full. So those are some of the challenges we face with containers. Some of the solutions, you see, we've really gone to a camera solution here as well. And so what we started to do was put cameras inside the containers and really making it somewhat of a smart container and really around recycling. And the reason is now I can proactively get a score off a recycle load from the camera that tells me how contaminated is that load, where I can literally upcharge the customer and say, or educate the customer. Because the more contamination I get in that load, the less money I make off the commodity. So the problem we've had with container technology, as I mentioned, 15, 16 million containers. This stuff's not cheap. So to put that in a container and you can, I went to Alabama, math's not great, right? But anyway, you can figure out real quickly that you have a high cost of technology that you're putting in these containers, sometimes more in the past than it was. That's come way down. So now it's a more viable option. The other thing that's really helped us here is the use of GPS. And it seems simple that we take an order, we deliver a container, we put a service address in, we go pick it up. But if you're in a shopping mall, where is it in that shopping mall? If you're in an industrial center, where is it? And it's really hard to find, and that takes longer for the truck to find that. So obviously that drives costs up for us. It's not very efficient. Now we can deliver a container that gives us the exact geo coordinates. So I'm routing right there. I'm not, looking at 123 Main Street trying to figure out where that is. It's been a very efficient technology for us, and the technology cost again has gone way down. That makes it a more viable option. One of the last things I'll talk about in terms of the challenges here is the landfills themselves, and you see kind of a landfill here. The landfills are very capital upfront cost, very environmentally sensitive, as you can imagine. But managing the airspace and knowing when to build, a new cell or a new working face is tricky. We use a lot of, we can leverage a lot of technology to help us manage the life cycle of the whole of the landfill itself. Probably the longest running use of technology in the landfill is the ability to monitor all aspects of the working equipment, especially in recycle centers. So I don't know if you've ever seen one, probably not, but if you've been in one, sometimes there's air that blows paper up and lights that define glass, and it shoots it all over the place. There's a lot of sensors in these devices that are very helpful to help keep those lines moving, because once those lines stop moving, it is very costly for us when that production unit's down. But also in the aspect of monitoring the environment, so groundwater, leachate, air, even the smell, the odor of the air, because people ironically live near these things, or they've built homes near a lot of our, and so there's a lot of complaints around the environmental aspect of the landfill. New products, how do we capture? There's a lot of energy. I'm not much of an engineer or scientist, but obviously there's ways to capture the energy and put it back on the power grid. So how do we do that, and where do we, and who do we sell it to, and what's the technology that we can leverage? Again, investing in recycling, how do we make recycling more profitable? And that's a big challenge as well. So some of the solutions, lots and lots of sensors on the landfill. You see some of them up here. We put them on the equipment. I know where every bulldozer goes. It helps with daily cover as we cover the garbage that's come in. Do we need more or less? We map the landfill. What went in the hole at that particular time? Some of the groundwater monitoring that we're able to do is now very sophisticated, and we get real-time analysis. Drone technology, where we fly drones, we look for things that are anomalies in the earth, and it will chart that day after day. So we have a lot of slides on landfills. Don't really show but there's a lot of hills on these things, and sometimes if the material starts sliding, it's very costly, and it's a big environmental mess. So getting and being proactive about monitoring these things is very critical. And then we've found ways to take landfill gas and sell it back into the grid, or put it back into the grid at a lot of our landfills. And this has become rather profitable, but it's just more environmentally sound as well. We're able to take some of this gas that might have been turned into carbon dioxide, that's released into the atmosphere, is now going back into the grid. So very much a recycled product. And like I mentioned, the technology that's going into the ability in the recycle centers it used to be a truck would come in, dump the material on the floor, and people would hand pick it. And we have facilities now that we have very little human intervention. It's all technical. And we get lots and lots of data that helps us with the cleaner commodities and allows us to, hopefully make a profit in recycling and keep those going. So from an analytics standpoint, all of these sensors, all of this technology, there's a ton of data. So what do you do with it? I mentioned the poor data quality that we had, a lot of data silos. We took an approach of we need to get really historical and real time down. We need to be able to run our business, have the right KPIs to understand how we operate and to make changes based on those metrics and have everybody believe them. And we were able to do that. But really what's kind of fascinating is the predictive side. So the ability to take data that we collect and turn that into and monetize it. So I'm a flower shop, and guess what happens every Mother's Day or Valentine's Day? I need an extra pickup. Why am I waiting for them to call? I have that data. Why don't I just go pick them up and schedule it? Say, hey, flower shop, every year you've needed an extra pickup. We're coming. We're being proactive, etc. Price increases is something that we've really done, some good work on. So I mentioned the container data. What's going in that container? So if I'm picking up a feather factory, it's pretty light. If I'm picking up an all-you-can-eat buffet, it's a heavy load, right? I'd rather price increase and lose the all-you-can-eat buffet than I would the feather factory. It's an easy pickup. It's very light. I can take these that load very easily all day long. And now you can have targeted price increase versus just price increase across everybody. So it's been something that's been very, very, very helpful and has really helped us with defection. And that's another thing that we can take. How do you pay? How do the customers pay? Who is right for not a non-pay? Who's not, based on all the data? So analytics has become more and more something that we are focused on. And what we're trying to create is a different model. So the Uberization of trash. So I mentioned before, I pick up a commercial business every Tuesday, Thursday, whether that container's full or not. Why can't I pick that up when the sensor tells me it's full? It's time to come get it. We have automatic route, the ability to automatically route now, so the truck can be dispatched. That truck route can be changed based on traffic data. So now I'm able to get a vehicle to these commercial locations and service them in a manner that is better for them instead of every Tuesday, Thursday, or whatever the frequency may be. Now the CFOs don't like that because you love that I got some guaranteed revenue no matter what. You hope you're picking up an empty container, but I think the customer satisfaction that would drive from the ability to do this type of customer experience approach where it's based on what the customer wants is fascinating. It's something that we're looking at very closely. So to wrap up real quick, just some next steps. So we're talking about automation at the edge. How do I take these sensors and data and really leverage that and do more automation around it? Proactive around landfills, for example. I got a groundwater event. Can I do something with valves and shut this down that's automatic? How do I automatically do stuff with the containers, right? So container needs a repair, container needs a pickup, et cetera, et cetera. Just all kind of things we can do. And then I mentioned what we're trying to do around different business models. So not the traditional business model. The industry's changing fast. How do we become the disruptor and not become disrupted? But a couple key lessons that we've kind of learned through this. So I started about 2.5 years ago at Advanced, and we really had to shift from, okay, we've got a bunch of servers and ERPs, and that was the focus of the IT department. Let's focus on business outcomes. Let's turn our technical team into really just so the business can leverage us in the technology department and really affect the outcome of the bottom line, of safety, of all of those goals that the company has. You probably heard this a zillion times. We failed in a lot of different things. Some things worked, some didn't. We had to switch out vendors that made more sense. That's okay. And the whole entire company needs to be okay with that, but you are going to fail. Vendors, you need them. They're partners. They're not really vendors. Your key ones, listen to them. Don't, I've seen, when I walked into the environment in Advance, it was very adversarial with vendors, which is silly, right? You need to have the right account teams. You need to have the right vendors. But when you find the good ones, partner with them. And then, in capability, don't be afraid to change out the capability in your organization. We, like I said, heavily focused on infrastructure and ERP, and we flipped that narrative. Now we're, helping produce revenue and drive customer satisfaction. So shameless plug, we're being acquired by Waste Management. For any golfer in here, if you've not been to Scottsdale for this event, this is the craziest sporting event I've ever been to, and I've been to many. So for example, most golf tournaments, the Masters or the Players Championship, you might get 35,000 people on a course in one day. So on Saturday at the Waste Management Open in Scottsdale last year, 245,000 people, which sounds miserable, but it's a really unique experience. A lot of fun, little sky boxes up around holes. They boo, it's not traditional golf clap. It's really kind of an interesting and entertaining event. Obviously sponsored by Waste Management. The big thing here is zero waste. Not one thing from this event ever goes to the landfill. So everything is recycled, composted, etc. It's pretty amazing given the size of the event. So listen, thanks for sticking around and talking a little bit about trash. There's how to contact me. If you have any questions or anything, I'll be over here getting de-mic'd and happy to answer them for you. Take care. Thanks.